can't even tell you how frequently I'm asked this kind of question. So, how do I explain myself? I wish it was that simple. It's really not. The dogs keep running in and out, distracting me. One thing that people don't tend to understand and take at face value is one of the most fundamental reasons. Hi, Ben. Is the fact that we tend to go after what we consider familiar. As in examples we had from our parent, or our childhood, from our parents, early relationships, things like that. So I guess instead of pointing out what's wrong with everyone else, I could possibly find where I'm the common denominator here. For starters, Carl Jung and Myers-Briggs, archetypes and personalities, distinctive personality types. There's about 16 of them, and to this day, they're taken into account. A lot of people go by it, believe the theory. So, that being said, certain personality types tend to attract other personality types. Now, if you're a person who's kind of controlling, bossy, needs someone to kind of take care of you and do everything you say, not every personality type is going to tolerate that. So there's a lot of things going on. There's also boundaries. We'll get into that a little bit later. So as far as the personality types go, what types of personalities tend to attract, I guess, guys that you might consider fuckboys, abusive, dramatic, headaches, or ones that basically you end up worse off than you were when you first met them. That's like not ideal, right? You don't want to like be worse because of knowing somebody. INFJ is one of the rarest personality types, and I'm not saying like, ooh, I'm special. Like, it's actually kind of it's very lonely. It's there's a lot of paradoxes associated with it, and not a lot of people get it. So that's why it can be very easy to be targeted by a certain individual, because you feel like no one understands you. INFJ is actually a lot more introverted than you probably realize that might be. If I have a stage, an audience, a camera, that's totally different. That's like the only area that I maybe have like the teeniest bit of esteem and confidence. Everywhere else, none whatsoever. So I'll like overcompensate and I'll be like really big in those instances, but any other time I'm pretty quiet and reserved, and a lot of people don't realize that. INFJ stands for introverted, and then feeling is the last one. What is the N? We'll look up the N later. Kind of a unique personality type. You'll feel like, maybe you don't fit in, no one gets you. And there's all different types. I'm not gonna say they're all exactly the same. It's just kind of the way their mind works, more or less, and things that they may be prone to. So that kind of person could have like an isolated upbringing, or feel different in school, like not have a ton of friends, or have issues with peers, or even if they do get along with people, they just don't want to be around people. And that they feel like they don't give a lot of people the chance to have any even friendships. So with that being said, it is lonely, right? Isolating, and you feel like no one gets you. So when someone comes around and they're charming and they like, I guess, are like, oh my god, your weirdness is awesome, or whatever, like they appreciate things about you that you were kind of insecure about, it's so easy to just like fall for that, whether what they're saying is genuine or not. In the end, it really doesn't matter. Hi, Pop. Okay. All right. So I must have gotten this question probably a million times by now. At least one of my relationships has been very public, a lot of details, duration, breakup, you name it. And I've also been pretty open about additional ones as well. And some people have kind of noticed personality type consistencies or patterns, and I often, hi, good boy. I'm often asked like really insulting questions, or people make a lot of Sadie. I'm often asked a lot of questions about how I ended up dating certain people. And although I'm going to refrain from talking about anyone in particular, hi Sadie. Although I will refrain from talking about anyone in particular, there's a couple things I will address. This is going to be a pretty extensive video, by the way. So sometimes you'll hear people talking about their crazy exes, and I think when they blame everything on the crazy ex, that is definitely a red flag. If you don't see maybe yourself as a common denominator. I'm not saying that you couldn't have been wrong. Okay, we'll start with the boundaries. So basically, the biggest issue with boundaries is when you're unable to enforce them, and this can go beyond just relationships. It can be like friendships, it can be your boss, it can be anyone in your life, any person in which you just can't say no because you feel guilty. They manipulate you. They'll find any reason to just basically force you to do something that you don't want to do, but you also don't have to do. But you're somehow manipulated to do various favors, chores, just constantly, and you just feel like taken advantage of. You never get credit, and it just comes to be expected, and it like deep down you're like you hate it and you would rather not do it. When you can't establish boundaries for any reason, like it could be people who are manipulative can basically make you feel like you owe them constantly, like there's a tab running and you'll never get right or even with what you owe in their opinion. People can play the oh feel sorry for me card, like I'm helpless, I need you to do it. Maybe some people who've done like 1 or 2 favors for you make you do like 1 million to make up for it. There's all kinds of circumstances, reasons in which people that are entitled will put that on you, either directly or imply it, and know that you won't be able to say no, and essentially you'll do whatever they want. And you know, you are being used, you're being taken advantage of, and you're well aware of it, but you just won't say no. Maybe because you're a people pleaser. Very common. People pleasers tend to attract the worst guys. Because it's usually guys who need someone to constantly please, be at their beck and call, do everything they want, be their mommy. People pleasers tend to have the hardest time establishing their own boundaries. And that sucks because eventually you'll snap and, you know, no to everything, or you'll gradually try to do it, and it'll be really awkward because you'll realize how hard it is to say no to the simplest things that you should be able to say no to, or you see other people say no to, and you're like, why can't I do that? And when you're able to finally start doing that, you'll feel a lot better and have more time to yourself, and you're not obligated to always have to do something for somebody. You can be about you occasionally, and that's another thing that people like me may have in common who date like less than ideal guys, or guys who kind of leave them in a bad spot at the end. Being a people pleaser, not being able to say no, empathetic to a fault, like you like to see the best in everybody. You'll buy the sob stories. You'll see the potential in everyone. You'll ignore the red flags. Like even if they're blaring in your face, you just be completely oblivious to them. You'll find yourself making excuses for horrible behavior, and you can actually become addicted to the mistreatment because of the occasional reward that you get for it. And that's also within the cycle of like abusive situations. And another thing people don't understand, and this is so frustrating because I think it's pretty obvious. No abuse or control or manipulation can occur without first implementing and continuing a psychological trauma, abuse, control. So if you slowly break someone down and keep breaking them down, over time you're gonna employ something called learned helplessness. I invite you to look that up. It was an experiment done with dogs, I want to say 40s, maybe earlier. And basically by setting up a barrier for the experimental group of dogs, and then eventually moving around the barriers and stuff, that the dogs just assumed the barriers were there. They didn't try to go through a fence or a doorway. They just like, oh, I'm screwed. So that happens on a subconscious psychological level. Also, we now know that verbal abuse, name calling, things of that nature, it's not sticks and stone can break my bones. Like you can reprogram somebody to believe things about them that are not true. Stealing labels, and they'll constantly fight and resist those labels. Like if you have people, or if you ever find yourself and you've dated guys like this, you'll find yourself yelling, getting sucked into, baited into like ridiculous fights. It's because usually there will be a key trigger phrase that they say to you, which is a label that you've probably fought that was put on you by other people, most likely a parental figure of sorts. So you're set up for this. The biggest thing is the constant power struggle, the lack of respect. You can get promised the world. Most likely they're not going to come through on it, and if they do, it'll be short-lived. You're never going to see a change in behavior. If anything, you're going to be whipped up into shape more to accommodate them even more, and that's another thing too. Empathetic, accommodating, agreeable people tend to attract the polar opposite, right? Because you can manipulate slowly, get them to do whatever you want. Now, worst case scenario, I'm not saying when you don't see all these signs you don't think, oh, I should go. Trust me, there's a lot that happens behind closed doors to keep that person to stay. There can be threats, you can be isolated from your family, and I'm not referring to anyone in particular, I'm just giving examples, so please don't read into stuff and make assumptions. I've had all this happen with various people, but we're not going to get specific. But basically, be isolated from your friends and family. You can have your phone taken, you can have your keys taken, you can be intimidated, you can have everything to lose. And so you just there is no exit strategy. And that's the worst part. Being too nice, you can also find yourself in these cycles. Giving too much of the benefit of the doubt, too many chances to people, and just really ignoring the red flags. Dude, that's just wild up there. The fuck? A lot of times friends and family will not support you because they're like, you need to get away from this person. You're like, I need help getting away. And it's like a vicious cycle, and like the actual support needed to do that is not there. People think, oh, just leave and you're good. Please don't assume anyone, I'm referring to anyone in particular, but I know with physical violence, for sure, when you actually are gonna leave, like for good, like you're not coming back, your abuser no longer has anything to lose. More likely to be like murdered in a psychotic rage, cold blood, than in any other time over any other conflict. When you're really ready to leave, that is the most dangerous time. And so for people to be like running their mouth like, oh, this person likes the abuse, oh, they're stupid, no, that's so naive. It is so much more complex than that. Nobody likes the abuse. Nobody likes the mistreatment. Trust me. Trust me. It's just how brainwashed are you to believe that it's your fault, or oh, they didn't mean it, or how frustrated are you to resist it, and then where are you going to go? Because most often than not, there's all kinds of stuff going on. Financial abuse, psychological control, coercive control. Maybe they'll try to join in on finances and stuff, and that can make it really hard when you want to split, because you would have to secretly stash stuff away without them noticing, and you would have to like slowly move a couple things you care about, all your important documents, and then one day just be gone and never come back, and that's it. That's what it takes. You can't just dip in front of them. Like, they'll murder you in some cases. So anyone saying what they would do in that situation, you have no fucking clue. You have no clue. And if you have, oh, this is another thing, we haven't even touched on self-esteem. We haven't even touched on daddy issues, really. Like, there's all this stuff that makes the person who picks guys like that, like the perfect victim to be stuck in that situation. And trust me, they don't want to be in that. As soon as it gets to a certain point, like they're like, I can't handle it anymore, but the other person doesn't want to let them go, because why? They have someone who's subservient, they have someone who's doing whatever bullshit that they don't want to do for themselves. They have a good thing, and they're well aware of that. So it's kind of a good thing that this whole concept is finally getting the attention and research I feel it deserves. Basically, this is a big deal. The toxic relationship, up and down, high and lows, makeup, breakup, drama, honeymoon phase, that's all can actually become addicting. Like any other drug or habit, you become addicted to the occasional times that they'll reward you, or maybe more like the honeymoon phase, like after crazy abuse, they'll bullshit, promise it'll never happen again. There'll be a kind of love, that you'll get, and you'll feel like, okay, well, that's better than nothing. All the promises to the moon, they'll never make right on it. They'll never be consistent. But your brain just doesn't register that. It just feels great, and you can actually become addicted to that whole cycle. Again, the people who think, women who get stuck in that or have had multiple partners that were fucking twats, It's not that simple, dude. Obviously, they don't think they deserve any better for many reasons. And that's more sad. Like, we should pay attention to that instead of be like, oh, what's wrong with you? Self-esteem is everything. Your ACE, which is adverse childhood experiences, your ACEs are not too high. Great, you can go and live a normal life. If they're high, you're gonna end up like this. It's programming. It's not just programming, it's like chemical, it's conditioning. First five, like there's all kinds of shit at play. And to say that someone's stupid, messed up themselves, or all these other things is so uninformed, immature, dismissive, arrogant, and there's other words for it, there's other adjectives to like say how like preposterous that the simplification of that indication is. Also, fear of the unknown. Some women were just kind of always out on their own, no support system, nothing, and some women are just like in a whole survival thing. That's even sadder. Being a good listener, because being able to provide that for someone and making them feel good kind of gives you purpose too. And these kind of people that you can attract, which are the polar opposite, will totally take advantage of that. You'll milk that, right? You'll see the best in everybody. You'll stay way too long because you see some kind of silver lining, or you think they're going to make right on any one of their promises, which they've never had in the past. Why would they ever come through? But there's something about it. Or maybe you've given up on love altogether and you guys have like one or two things that was like really special, and you're romanticizing it and just totally dismissing how horrible it is. These are other really, really, really big reasons that we can tell ourselves to justify it, to stay in it, to justify to our friends and family. I saw a quote that said, you don't realize how messed up of a situation you may have been in until you have to explain it to someone else, and you're like, fuck, and you're like downplaying it, and like, you know, it was even worse than you're making it out to be. Like, that's not cool. And I looked at like, if my girlfriend were coming to me saying this was happening to her, would I tolerate that? Would I tell her to tolerate it? And it's so funny because more often than not, when I'm like thinking that way, it's no. So I think everyone else deserves the world, but not me. That's a huge problem. I want to say the biggest thing as far as the whole courting, charming, manipulating, or tricking, in my opinion, as far as that whole phase goes, it'll be a fresh breath air, whoever this person is. They'll be like fun, youthful, unique, like there'll be something about them that's like quirky, and that's usually where you're like, okay, cool, whatever. And then they'll always be very, very persistent. I've even had ones who are more quiet, covert, and then once it got serious, like they were crazy. Like, drop of a hat, you wouldn't know what was going to happen. These are all different types of cluster B disordered individuals, whether it's oppositional defiant disorder, antisocial, borderline, narcissistic personality disorder. There's a few more, but those types are all, they develop the personality disorder as a coping mechanism to just go about life. And it's all within their control. They know exactly what they're doing, and it tends to hurt people close to them. So they'll have issues within their friendships, close relationships, even work relationships. And people with like my kind of personality makeup, they'll fucking feel bad for them or try to help them out or encourage them, you know? And then eventually they'll see right through it, and by the time they see right through it, the other person may or may not be okay with your exit strategy. You know, so, and they may do a lot to thwart that. Being maybe agreeable, a people pleaser, not getting enough attention, validation, none of that, right? What's gonna happen? You're gonna probably be in situations that you maybe are less than ideal, or you may find yourself settling, or you may not be able to express your needs. Like, that's horrible. Like, that should not be an issue at all, but that's kind of what'll happen. And like I said, you can't have any type of controlling or abusive relationship without the covert psychological stuff too. So while you're being worn down, maybe you already were worn down at a baseline in your childhood, most likely. Each time, the longer time goes by, the more people that do that, like, you have less esteem, less self-worth, whether you realize it or not, you really do. And so you just tolerate it because you're like, well, no one else wants me, I'm no good, I'm trash. That's it. Like, it's fucking horrible. A lot of trolls on me, whatever, thinking they know everything about me, and they don't know shit. Surprised. I'm not saying I'm special. I'm not saying I'm attractive. I'm not saying I'm anything. Let's not talk about me for 2 seconds. There are very successful, attractive catches, other women who do the same thing as I do. And they just don't have worth. They don't know their worth. And they're just like, well, no one wants me, so I'll just cling on to this bullshit person, even though they suck and you know it's probably not going to be forever. You're just like loyal to the end, ride or die, for people who are just not going to reciprocate that. And then maybe you do meet someone cool who's a little bit not so shitty, maybe a little bit more decent, maybe even more compatible. But the interactions, their boundaries that they're respecting, their, you know, other things that they're doing that are like in a more healthy way, it may seem weird to you, and they may like rub you the wrong way or make you like uninterested because you don't understand having space, respect, and choices. It sounds like stupid, but it's the real thing. And I know, okay, I talk about a lot of my past experiences. There have been 3 guys who are not terrible. Okay? They didn't ruin my life, but I have nothing bad to say about. One, I feel like I didn't like him at first. Well, I thought he was cute and cool. And then I realized like he treated me so great. I'm like, oh my God, I've never had anyone treat me like this. So out of nowhere, I ended up really into this person. And I feel like I was throwing myself at him, which was fucking pathetic. You know, too available, you name it. Another person, I just had no interest. I just stopped calling them. You know, it was the third person. I came up with a dumb reason. They said something stupid and I used that as a reason to break it off. You know, so it's like really weird. And then you see what else I tolerate from other people who are way worse. And it's like, what? It's because the personality makeup of the other type of person is a little bit controlling, a little bit domineering. They take the wheels. They're persuasive as fuck. They're manipulative. And they won't take no for an answer. You know, they charm you out your pants or whatever. Sometimes some of them can make really awesome sex and you can be like totally fucking blinded by that or distracted by that, polluted by that. That can happen too. There's a lot of things that can pacify the horribleness and make it seem like you have a good thing going on because number one, you don't think you're worth shit. Number two, they make you feel like you should be lucky that I treat you like trash. Number three, you kind of get addicted to that whole cycle because every once in a while they'll be really nice and give you like a dog bone, a doggy treat, more or less, and you're like, oh my God, you know, and that'll make you think that other things they've implied or promised may eventually come. No, honey, no, that's just to keep you going. It's all super covert, mapped out, played out, calculated, whether or not like they have it down like a pickup artist or some other fucking bullshit game. You know what they're doing. They know what they're doing, and these people don't change. As long as you're serving a purpose, great. If there's another option, best believe they will upgrade. They may keep bounce the 2, 3 on the back burner just because they always want to have somebody. Apologies are never going to be sincere. Like, you're going to find yourself giving, compromising, and eventually you're just like, you'll snap. You're like, I can't handle this anymore. I mentioned earlier how like we're attracted to familiarity because it's normal to us. It's safe. We know what's going to happen. It's like, it's not like this weird feeling of uncertainty. Like, we kind of know more or less on a subconscious level know how it's going to go down. If you're rejected by a parent of either gender, or if you have both your parents but they're not always involved emotionally, or you know, if they're just like aggressive or abusive in any way, dismissive of you and your feelings, you're gonna most likely grow up to attract that. You know, with like dads and stuff, they'll be strict on no dating, no talking to guys, nothing. But then they don't give their daughters enough attention, and they're like, they wonder what happens. And everything your kids are seeing, how you're treating your spouses and stuff, they're gonna emulate that. They're gonna think that's okay. What did that teach me? To tolerate disrespect, to tolerate being ignored. My mom would always say things like never settle, but she didn't really give me the fine print on that. I'm not blaming her. I'm not. She did, you know, what she could with her coping skills and with her tools and the way she was raised. But I do kind of see a pattern with her too. And I'm like, damn, I'm trying to break that shit, you know? Because her dad's the same way as my dad. Yeah. Just completely distant, uninvolved, heartless even. I don't give a fuck. Me and my grandpa aren't close, so I don't give a shit if he sees this. Go ahead, tell him. You're a dick. And you're an asshole for telling my mother that she'd never be anything more than a waitress. That's fucked up. That's fucked her up to this day. Like, fathers instill their daughters' self-esteem, they instill their self-worth. If the only way your kid ever gets attention is from boys because she has no self-esteem and she wants attention, period, what do you think's gonna happen? She's gonna start to think all that she's worth is sex or her looks. It's like common sense. So for like slut shaming is like so stupid because like it's so much more complex than that. It's not like, oh, I want to be a slut. It's like, no, this is the only love I've ever got. This is the only attention I've ever got. This is the only thing that I feel I have a value to offer anybody. And more often than not, that is absolutely so far from the truth. But if you're not praised on other things that you have about yourself, if you don't have any esteem in any other things, what are you gonna do? Like, what the fuck do people expect? And there is like somewhat of a reoccurring theme with performers. A lot of performers tend to have had childhood emotional neglect. It's called CEN, C-E-N, rejected by one or both parents on an emotional level, and they needed a way to express themselves. And they found an artistic way to do that. And that goes for painters, writers, musicians, dancers, like anything that's like performance expressing. A lot of them will have this reoccurring thing too. I'm not saying they'll have toxic relationships, but like they needed a way to express themselves and to get validation, even if it's from complete strangers, because maybe their small circle family was biased and just it was never good enough, never given praise, so they'd rather get it from complete strangers. Totally makes sense. People comparing a person's sanity, intentions based on maybe another counterpart person, other half, at one time or another being a little bit out there, right? So just by default, naive people will make assumptions like, oh, well, what's wrong with you? Okay. Again, that is so oversimplifying.